KSFO.
Hour number 3 right here on Hot Talk 560 KSFO. I'm Barbara Simpson. Babe in the Bunker, Saturdays from 5 to 7, Sundays 4 to 7 right here, 560 on the AM dial, KSFO. The phone number, keep it handy. It works all the time, 808-5600. Invite you to be part of it. We're going to be talking part of this hour with Mimi Steele, who has been with us before. She is president of the San Francisco Bay, CAPR, and founder of Bay Area Liberty. It's a property rights organization. She's going to give us an update on what has been going on. And again, the phone number is 808-5600. Mimi, it's been a little bit since you and I talked. What's been happening?
Well, Barbara, there are 3 topics I want to address this evening. One is regionalism. The other one is a small city coalition that we're building. And the third thing is I want to talk a little bit about open space and give a warning to the rural property owners in the Bay Area.
Well, you mentioned a small city coalition. That's really getting small cities together because in unity there is strength, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me start with the need for doing this.
Okay.
You know, you were very astute a couple weeks ago when you found and told people about a meeting that took place down in the Silicon Valley dealing with making it a one Bay Area. It was a regionalism meeting, and it didn't get a lot of play in the media. Didn't. But what happened was a week later they sent out an email to everybody on their email list, and they said, hey, guess what? We decided that the best way to approach this is to develop what they call an Institute for Regional Studies. And they're funding this with $1 million worth of seed money, and this is just the start. So in addition to all of the money that's going into the Association of Bay Area Governments, that's ABAG and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, you're going to have another non-governmental group of business leaders, probably mostly big business people and developers, pushing the regional agenda. So it's not good news for us small town people.
No, and explain to people it very briefly, if you would, when we talk about the regionalism. I know I talked about it on my program, and in fact, it was that they, rather than having every little town be its own individual town and sovereign, is that we'll all be just one big region run by a regional government with laws for everybody.
Exactly. They're talking about something like the old concept of a city-state, where everything, all 101 cities and 9 counties of the Bay Area would be melded into this super regional government entity. And, you know, the higher up you go in the chain in terms of representation, supposedly, the less representative those people are. The farther they are away from the people who can actually look them in the eye and vote them out, and it's a real problem. It's just like pushing everything up to the federal level.
Exactly.
It's getting out of local control, and that's been our whole discussion when we've talked about the One Bay Area Plan. And just to refresh people's minds, the One Bay Area Plan is a 25-year plan that combines housing, transportation, and land use. The whole purpose behind this plan is to force cities and towns around the Bay Area to do development along transit lines, and the development would be high density, what we call stack and pack housing, multi-use. You live on you work on the bottom, or there's a shop on the bottom, and you live upstairs, just like in Europe. And that's been something that's in the process of going on. They're scheduled to approve this thing by the end of June, and there are going to be some meetings coming up that when we get the schedule, we'll let people know about it. But this is very, very dangerous because it takes control completely out of the hands of local people. And I think the thing, moving on to the reason that we're talking about putting together a coalition of small towns, is the fact that if you take this to the logical extreme, these small towns are going to be non-existent in a couple years. Because all of this.
Well, there's no need for them if you take the government away from them and you demand that they develop in a way that some outside group is forcing them to do, whether it be with roads or with housing or with schools, et cetera, there's no need for local control, and therefore you give up your town and your identity, which is what everybody seems to want.
Yes, the character of the town will be completely changed. And one of the charms of the Bay Area is that all 101 cities are pretty different. Mm-hmm. And, the problem with organizations like ABAG and MTC, these regional organizations, is the fact that they are really controlled a lot by the major cities. So San Francisco and Oakland and San Jose are calling the shots. And so the little towns get really left out of the picture. I have a list of some things about why you should oppose regionalism. When they had that meeting, they said the purpose of regionalism was that you could get economies of scale.
Right.
And it would be cheaper. Well, there's no such thing as economies of scale with government, because the bigger you grow government, the more ossified the bureaucracy becomes, and the less responsive they are to the citizens. Regionalism also gives more power to special interests. So instead of having to lobby in 101 cities, the teachers' unions and the police and the firefighters and all of those kinds of groups, all they have to do is put pressure on a regional body, and those people will cave.
Good point.
Governments and county governments become irrelevant positions, and the people lose a chance to influence their government. So the key to all of this is local, and again, that circles back around to why we want to have this small towns / cities in the Bay Area coalition. So if you're not in San Francisco, Oakland, or San Jose, we really want to hear from you. And if you're in any of those areas and you don't like what's going on, we want to hear from you as well.
And they need to know. I know you gave us access to a soundbite that was from Saratoga. And this was a discussion where a gentleman was speaking to, the Board of Supervisors or the Town Council of Saratoga?
So let me give you a little bit of background.
Because I'm going to play that little soundbite, but to give us the background on it quickly.
Fantastic. So what happened was the city of Saratoga actually is challenging these regional housing needs analysis numbers. They put their documentation in a couple weeks ago ahead of the deadline, and this individual who's talking is a Saratoga citizen, and he's addressing the town council, and they're the ones who voted to say, yes, we're going to challenge these RENA numbers. And as far as we know, they're the only city that actually did that, and his reasons for wanting this challenge are really great. So,
and we're just going to play a small part of it. Let's, Suzanne, let's play that Saratoga one right now. Here it comes.
This does, however, represent probably, if not the largest, one of the largest long-term challenges to the character of our city that we will see. That there is an unholy alliance between ABAG, the League of Cities, and the nonprofit world that represents affordable housing. It should be clear to everyone that none of this will mean any affordable housing in Saratoga. A condominium that goes for $500,000 instead of $800,000 is still not going to be a place where a homeless family can relocate out of a shelter. Mm-hmm. Who's kidding who?
That's pretty blunt kind of talk. I like hearing that, and that's really what this affordable housing issue is about. They're really trying to change the personality of a town and have people from all different income levels, sort of like Section 8 housing, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly what it would end up being, and that's why we really need to fight this. And if you notice in the beginning, he made the comment that this was the major challenge. What he was referring to was these forced, mandated by the state, regional housing numbers. So the state is telling the Bay Area, this is how many units you have to be prepared to build of housing at all income levels, and then the Association of Bay Area Governments is putting their thumb down on these cities, and we have to fight back, or we're going to be completely destroyed as a unique area.
Okay, Mimi, hang on. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, let's talk more about this Small City Coalition and the green space that you mentioned also. That is all part of what you're working on, and also a couple of meetings coming up that we want folks to know about. Get your pen and paper handy, folks, and write it down, and we will be back right here on KSFO. I'm Barbara Simpson. My guest is Mimi Steele. Shall we dance? Barbara Simpson right here on Hot Talk 560, KSFO 808-5600. We're talking with Mimi Steele of One Bay Area, about One Bay Area. She's with BayAreaLiberty.org. That's one website. The other is proprights.org/SFBay. And her Twitter is at 912CalGal. Mimi Steele is her name. Mimi, what's going on with the green space part of all of this?
So we have, there's something that I've mentioned before, and it's called Ballot Box Planning. And essentially what it allows the city or county to do is put an initiative on the ballot that would allow the voters to decide on the use of somebody's private property. You know, when people say open space, they think about, you know, the trails and things like that. Open space usually starts out as somebody's private property. Mm-hmm. And this is a way that a lot of organizations like the Sierra Club have been able to take property out of production without physically taking it. So here in Alameda County in 2000, they put a measure on the ballot that the voters voted for. And the first thing I want to say, you know, you're always saying to people, be careful what you pray for, you might get it.
Right.
Well, I would say be careful what you vote for, you might get it.
Well, we just did that in November, and look what we're getting, so that's something else.
Yeah, well, and in this case, you know, the measure that went on the ballot was very deceptively written. It was written to say that the purpose was to preserve open space and agriculture. Mm-hmm. Well, back in January, there was a hearing because there's an equestrian place in the Alameda County area that just needed to put some extra buildings on his property to take care of his horses. And the Alameda County Board of Supervisors was arguing with the Sierra Club about whether or not he could do this. So the irony of all of this is you're setting up a situation where supposedly this is to preserve agriculture, but then when the ranchers and farmers need to do something to keep their agriculture as a viable business, the Sierra Club steps in and says, no, this is exactly like the Drake's Bay scenario that you talked about yesterday. And Frank Lundy was really right to say that people, those ranchers and dairy farmers in that area should be very, very concerned because this is typically how the government does it. They nibble away at you to the point where you can't be profitable as a business. If people are interested in this topic, they can go to, I have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/SFBayCAPR, and there's a video up there about one rancher's plight in progressive California. So the reason this comes up in terms of One Bay Area is there's all of this talk about affordable housing, but nobody is looking at the reasons that housing is unaffordable. And one of the reasons housing is unaffordable in the Bay Area is we've put all of this property out of production.
Right.
There was a study that was done by Harvard a couple years ago where they asked the question, does America face an affordable housing crisis? And if so, why? And their answer was no, there's no affordable housing crisis. But the problem is in areas like California, the high prices are due to zoning and land use controls that play a dominant role in making housing expensive. So there needs to be a conversation going between people about, do we want affordable housing? If that's an objective, then how do we get there? And maybe one of the ways we get there is have a more realistic look at land use policy.
And, you know, the other part of it is what do you mean by affordable housing? Is it affordable housing for a young couple who maybe between the two of them working make over $100,000 a year, but they still can't afford to buy anything in their hometown? Or is it for the guy living in Oakland on welfare who just needs a roof over his head? Is it that kind of affordable housing you're talking about? And when you talk to these people, they never specify.
Exactly. And everybody kind of puts in their mind what they think. We just had a meeting with the mayor of Livermore a couple days ago, and he said, well, affordable housing in Livermore is a couple making $70,000 a year. Well, you're subsidizing that. Mm-hmm. And so and the definition of affordable housing depends on, it's calculated by your town's income level and other factors that go into that. So what's considered affordable housing in Saratoga, as that gentleman said on the audio, is different than what it is out in Livermore. But again, all of this stuff gets subsidized ultimately by the taxpayer. So everybody's paying to help somebody get there. No
question. Now, you gave me some information about there's an outfit called Orinda Watch, which Orinda is a small community just on the other side of the Caldecott Tunnel in Contra Costa County. And there are 3 towns there that are adjacent to each other, Orinda, Moraga, and Lafayette. They call themselves La Morinda with the group of towns. But each one of those towns, individually and separately, is being pushed into this infill housing, massive, high density, with the low-income housing fit in there somewhere. And there's a meeting coming up. Do you have the information on that in front of you?
Yes, I do. It's March 13th. And it's going to be at the Veterans Memorial Building in Lafayette from 6 to 8. You can go to orindawatch@gmail.com and send them information. I'm going to put this information up on my website and send out an email. There's also going to be something on March 20th in Marin, same type of thing. Bob Ravazio, who is the mayor of Corte Madera, he's going to be involved. He's also speaking at this one in Danville, and Bob Silvestri. Both of them are in Marin, and they've got a bunch of organizations in Marin that are fighting this. So this gets back to the issue of the coalition. So for right now, if people are interested in this, if they go to bayarealiberty.org, there's a place to sign up to join our email list. We also have up there something called Take Action, Contact Local Elected Officials. We have a sample letter. And I'd just like to make a couple comments about this letter. It's designed to go to local officials, to your planning department. It basically says, I'm a resident and a taxpayer. I'm outraged that this plan, this is One Bay Area, is going to take away our right to self-determination. The One Bay Area plan isn't our choice. And this is really the interesting part. If you, the city, adopt this One Bay Area plan, you are voluntarily giving up your county and city's rights to determine how best to address future needs of your community.
How do you answer people when you say that to them and they deny it? Because I've had that happen. They don't believe it. They don't want to believe it. They think it's just ducky.
Yeah, I would say look at the documentation, and I would start with the regional housing needs allocation numbers. If you go again to my website, the third thing over says housing numbers, RENA background, and if you click on that, you can actually go to the document that shows the housing numbers. I don't know how they can deny it. It's there in black and white.
Yeah, but because they don't want to admit it. That's the problem. Now, you're going to have speakers at this town hall meeting in Lafayette on March 13th from 6 to 7:45 p.m. at the Veterans Memorial Building on Mount Diablo Boulevard. It's the main drag right through town. Bob Silvestri, who is author of The Best Laid Plans, he's an environmentalist, a low-income developer, and an activist, and Bob Ravazio, the gentleman you mentioned, who is a council member in Corte Madera. I think I had him on the program a while.
You did.
I did. I thought so. The name was very familiar. And they're the first city council to say no to these housing mandates. And what you're hoping is that more city councils will pay attention to what's happening and have the courage to say no.
Well, the way they're going to have the courage to say no is through the citizens, because right now most of these city councils have bought into this. I do want to make a correction. I'm not speaking on the 13th at Danville. That's going to be the two Bobs, Bob Ravazio and Bob Silvestri.
Well, now you said Danville. This is Lafayette.
I'm sorry, Lafayette. Yeah, correct. It is Lafayette. I'm
okay.
Sorry. Yeah. So, but I am speaking on March 6th to Los Gatos, Saratoga, Los Altos, Monte Serena Citizens Town Hall. Again, these are the South Bay groups that we're trying to get to be part of a coalition, and that'll be at Harry's Hofbrau. That's this Wednesday at 6:45 in San Jose. So people can go to Eventbrite and just type in Los Gatos. That'll go up, or they'll go to my website and click on dates, March, and it'll have that meeting. And I'm speaking to the Republican women in Danville at Blackhawk on March 14th.
And then you mentioned the Marin meeting on the 20th of March, where Bob Ravazio is going to be speaking as well. So check the website. It is bayarealiberty.org or prop right. Is it property rights or just prop rights?
It's prop rights /SFA caper, but most of the information on the local issue is on the bayarealiberty.org.
Okay, very good. Mimi, thank you so much for bringing us up to date on all of this. I hope there's a good turnout for this because people really need to know what's happening. And we'll talk again. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
You're very welcome. And, you know, what you're looking at is an outside organization. And, by the way, they're all unelected. They were appointed to these positions where they're trying to bring in low-income housing. That's debatable. What do they mean by low-income housing? But it's the high-density housing, the infill housing with apartments on top and stores on the bottom. They do have a building somewhat similar to that already in Lafayette, sort of adjacent to the freeway, and BART runs right through town. But it will ruin the character of small towns. It will negatively affect the schools, certainly negatively affect property values. It's going to cause traffic and parking congestion, and quite frankly, take away your local rights for your town. And if you don't think it can happen, just do some reading and ask questions. Please. Please. I'm Barbara Simpson. Open lines until 7 right here on KSFO. Bye. Quickly, Michael in Berkeley, if you're still there, we'll take your call right now. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, I'm still here.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to thank you and Mimi Steele very much for her generous time and effort on the show here. She gave out an awful lot of information in a very short period of time.
I know. She's terrific. And she does this. It's all volunteer. She doesn't get paid for any of this. She has a job in addition to all this.
That is very true.